Shut up and sit down.
Howdy guys, it's Andy from Bigmeks Work and Painting Studio, and today we're painting the Lord Aquilor from the Age of Sigmar Stormcast Eternal range. This is courtesy of Matt, one of our patrons. This is a commission video, so I hope you enjoy it. So as you can see, a lot of detail on this model. So I'm starting off with a hippogriff, and I've been given inspirational photos by Matt, and he wanted it sort of a blue and red, like a demigriff. So I started off with Cantor blue. Now, you guys who have been over in the UK recently will know that the weather's been playing absolute havoc. So I do get a bit fed up at times of this, but let's get on to it anyway. So as you can see now, I've got a couple of coats of the blue on, and I'm starting onto the red to get the feathers in to make it look a bit more interesting. And this is Vallejo's Burnt Red, which is a very, very deep red. Once it dries really dark. I'm using a nice big brush here. It's a size 3, which I picked up from a local gaming store. Don't know what particular brand it is, but it's very good for getting these big base coats down. So as you can see, it's set down. It's a real rich colour. So now starting off with the highlighting the blue now, and this is Ariana Blue, which is from scale 75. Now I'm trying to glaze this. As you can see, I'm already struggling with the weather. I'm using a wet palette and really thinning this paint down, and it's really starting to dry very quickly. So it makes glazing very difficult. So if you've got air conditioning in your house, really does it pay dividends when when you try and do glazing techniques. So a couple of layers of the Ariana Blue, and now it's scale 75's Mediterranean Blue, which is slightly brighter, and I'm using this all over the muscle texture, really bringing out that muscle texture with the glazing. I've really thinned this down, really very, very thin layers. It's almost coloured water at this for this, and you just gently make the most of the real nicely structured muscle textures. So another layer of Mediterranean Blue, and I'm just picking out those highlights on the muscles even more, really making that those muscle textures stand out a little bit. So after the Ariana Blue, I'm throwing a layer of Cantor Blue back into the recesses. This is just to darken it down again in certain areas. It also allows you to blend the glazes together, so you can really make the highlights move around a lot. Really being able to take the colours up and down really gives you a lot of control over the areas. So once I've got the Cantor in the recessed areas, just to blend things in again, I'm now starting to use a bit of Teclis Blue. As you can see, it's quite a vibrant colour. Well, that's not a problem, because when you're glazing, you're using such thin paints that you need the brighter colours to bring out the highlights a little bit. So you got a lot of breathing space when it comes to highlighting these colours. And again, just focusing on the upper sections of the muscle textures, adding the definition of the shapes to the model. So now, as you can see, it's a blue wash. You could use Drakenhof Nightshade. I used Army Painter's Blue Tone. Now this is really thinned down. It's, I thinned this down a hell of a lot. So to the point where I actually was able to do 3 layers on it to get the definition I actually wanted to. So I laid it up 3 times with this particular brand of wash. So after that, back on with the Teclis to start to bring out those highlights. And yeah, this is where I start to get really fed up with the weather. It is very, very difficult to get good quality glazing when the weather's making the paint dry up too fast. So, but I'm still persevering at this stage. This is Hero Blue, which is scale 75. As you can see, I'm just adding extra highlights to these areas now, and I'm really starting to see the muscle texture stand out, really getting that shape and definition from the model. So now it's another layer of blue tone, again really thin down, just the one layer this time though, as I just wanted to add extra depth into the models, and also using these washes quite liberally allows you to pull together any patchy sections from the lighter and dark areas. So it really allows you to blend the shades together. So at this stage I'd completely given up now. The weather had just really gotten over the top, and so I go to the airbrush for a little while, and I'm using the same colours. I'm using Hero Blue and Cantor Blue in alternate areas, just to add the highlights and the shades exactly where I want them to be. I'm going straight over the top of the highlighted models, and because I'm using such thin paint and over such bright highlights, it's just adding extra lightness to the model, so you can really see the colours just popping together, and you can still sort of see the muscle texture showing through, which is something I found I was a little bit surprised by. But if you control the airbrush really well, you can get any highlighting what you've got to show through, even through the really bright colours on the airbrush. So as you can see, I've got the definition coming up from the real vibrant colours. I'm now coming out with a Cantor Blue from underneath, just to pull the depth into it as well. And what you're getting is the highlights from the airbrush have accentuated the highlights what I've already painted in, and you're getting a real vibrant colour transition and some of the definition what I've painted on as well. So after that, it is blue tone again, just to bring those colours together a little bit more than what just gets a little bit more depth where you want it to be, which you can't always do with the airbrush. So as you can see now, I'm starting to add extra Hero Blue into the highlights, a little bit of Techless Blue as well, just to really add them highlights together. And I'm just brightening them up now, using the translucency of the airbrush paint to show me where the original highlights were. And I'm able to just brighten the paint work with the same colours as what I was using, just to add that little extra layer of highlights to really make these muscles textures pop. So I've just added a touch of an off-white into the final mixes of the airbrush of the Hero Blue, and as you can see, I'm just brightening up those final extreme hot spots now, like the edge of his tail or across the tops of his muscles, just to get the effect of the light hitting it. You don't want to go over the top, because the problem is with it being natural fur, it doesn't shine in the same way as armour would. So now onto the leather work. So this is Scale 75's black leather, which when layered up on its own looks quite purpley when it dries, but it gives you a really good base coat, and it really mixes well with some of the other leather colours you can work with. And this is decayed metal, also scale 75, which I find is a great base colour for any gold works. Really nice and rich, a dark coloured gold. Really adds a lot to the models when you start adding highlights. And onto the man, I decided I wanted to keep him similar but subtly different. So I went for the same colour scheme but with slightly darker armour. I wanted him to match with the mount, but also stand out from it as well. So this is navy blue, which is very dark, and it takes a couple of layers. It does really stand out nicely against the much brighter colours against the beastie. On for the ropes, and the ropes are Bosch Chestnut, which is a new colour we've not tried out. Again, it's a scale 75 one. This guy uses a lot of scale 75s on it, but I do try to use some of the more traditional colours as well at the same time. So his cloak is Vallejo's German Grey as a base, which is real dark. I wanted sort of a nice dark wolf pelt look, without it being too overpowering when it's highlighted up. So I went for the darkest grey I could find outside of a black, which is what brought me to that one. The metals were based in Vallejo's gunmetal, equally usable as lead belcher or ironbreaker, any of the darker region silvers will do the job equally well. This was just the one I've been using recently, so it was to hand, although any of the others would work equally fine. So onto the leather work again, and I've added some red leather into the black leather, and it just adds a bit more colour to it, brings it to a more natural, warm leather colour for the straps, and it just starts to make the colour really start to stick, and you get a nice rich leather colour from this combination. Whilst I'm waiting for that to dry, obviously a bit of a Nuln Oil on any of the silver work. You can't go wrong with Nuln Oil. To be honest, this is pretty much my default black wash. I don't find any of the others what I've come across anywhere near as good, so that's always the one I stick to. So onto the leather work again, and I've added some Bosch Chestnut into this, which is a slightly different mixture from what I've been going through normally, and it just makes the leather work a little bit on the red side, but not overpowering, so it doesn't clash against the feathers. And now it is added some orange leather in now, really starts to brighten it up, and as you can see I'm just sticking the sticking to the edges of the thing, and I'm also painting it in little tiny lines rather than as a flat highlight. I want the leatherwork to look pitted and worn, really well used. This really adds a little bit of life to the model. So now I'm using a bit of birch and just adding some more flaws, just tiny little marks onto the model, really making it look like it's been used a hell of a lot over the years. It just makes the model look a bit more believable. So onto the paper and also the inside of his cloak, which is high key yellow, which was a bit of a weird choice. Didn't go exactly the way I planned, but it came out okay in the end. So high key yellow is quite a very white yellow, so you get a nice creamy effect when you start to highlight it up. So I've added some birch to some Bosch Chestnut for the backpack, or the bedroll, and just to add a few nice little highlights onto the saddle and the bedroll, just to bring it all together. And you got a very nice warm leather colour, but it's also suitably different to the saddle and all the strapping, so you get a nice variation of colour on there. So onto the feathers. Start off with Aldebaran Red. This is somewhere around the Mephiston Red sort of area. A nice bright orangey red, and goes straight over the top of the burnt red really well. So you get a nice colour transition from it. As you're going for almost a full colour coverage over the feathers, getting so the feathers start to brighten up. So after the Aldebaran Red, it is Vallejo Airs Orange. Now, orange is actually quite a dark colour from compared to some of the other reds and oranges we're using, which is why I chose it. It's quite vibrant, but it's also not only a small step from the Aldebaran Red, so it gives you a nice highlight colour for the tail and also for the feather work. I'm trying to paint along the lines of the feathers as well, so you're getting some of the detail of the feathers in there, just to make the model look a bit more natural. So now on to the next highlight, which is Mars Orange, which is quite a vibrant orangey yellow. And I'm just going straight over the top. Because it's such a thin paint, and I've added a lot of thinners to it, I'm just able to go straight over the top, almost like a glaze, but it's a little bit thicker, so it does still sit over the top of the base colours. So now I've added some thinned down Army Painter Red Tone. Carabed Crimson will work just as well. This is just to add a bit of depth into the tails and along the feathers. Brings it all together nicely. So onto the hoofs and the talons, and also the beak to a degree as well. This is heavy brown, which is a Vallejo colour. It's almost a sort of a khaki, but it worked really well for the hooves. I was looking at different colours initially, but I came to heavy brown as it looked more almost a natural sort of nail colour. And then I've added some Iroko into it, which is a yellowy brown colour. It just adds that nice. It's a nice sort of transition from the heavy brown, so you can bring out those claws really nicely without being too stark a jump. So now it's Birch, which is from the Scale 75 range. And this is a real good colour. Any kind of ivory colour would work for this. Screaming Skull would do well, although it's a little bit too much on the white end of things. You want a little bit more yellow in there when it comes to doing something like this. It just adds a little bit more life to it than more of the whiter colours. So as you can see, I've added some more yellow to the highlights, and I'm just bringing them that tail out a little bit more using a really thin brush, and I'm just bringing out those nice fiery reds and yellows. It also warms up the cool colours of the blues, what it's next to. The beak is Iroko and a Haiku yellow mix, which actually was quite surprising. It worked really well, but it came out a little bit too close to the colours for the papers, so we address that a little bit later on. As you can see, it's a very bone-like colour at this stage, and the idea was I wanted to draw behind to the face rather than to its chest plate, so I wanted quite a vibrant coloured beak. Apologies about the starkness of the colours of it being quite a bright model, quite a bright beak, made it difficult to focus on at this part. So onto the cloak again, and that is Storm Vermin Fur, and yes, I'm dry brushing, which isn't something I particularly like doing, but for this particular cloak, the way it's textured, it's the best way of getting a nice even paint job on it. So just take your time, be careful. You don't want to block up any other detail work, because the problem with dry brushing is it can be very scruffy, very messy. So after the Storm Vermin Fur, it's Dawnstone, which is a nice bright colour. Really goes over well over the Storm Vermin Fur. It's a nice mid-tone, and it gets that sort of the movement as I'm leaving some of the darker recesses untouched. And this is Miskatonic Grey by Scale 75, just as the final highlight on the fur work, just on those raised sections, just to make it look a bit more fluid, if that's the right term. So onto the beak. As I said, it looked a bit too similar to the tapes. So I did it a quick glaze with Lamenter's Yellow by GW. One layer is all it took, and it turned it from a very bone colour to a really nice yellowy colour, much more bird-like. And I was surprised it worked so strongly. Actually, it was a pleasant surprise, as I've not used the glazes before for a long time. So onto the armour. And it is Cantabric blue, and I'm starting to just paint in the highlights now. It's a real rich colour, it goes really nicely over that navy. It's the next one up in its particular colour spectrum, so it worked really, really nicely. After that, it is I've added some Tesla blue into this, and I'm starting to focus on maybe the upper half of any highlight areas, just adding that depth in, making the highlights start and the armour start to move around a little bit. So at this stage now, it's pretty much pure Tesla, and I'm almost line highlighting at this point. I'm leaving certain areas darker and just bringing those panels out, and you get a nice, rich, deep blue colour. So I'm back in with the Hero Blue for the highlights, and I'm just adding a few gentle layers of a nice vibrant blue, keeping it really thin and using a nice pointed brush. As you can see, about halfway through this paint job, I'd actually got a better brush after complaining about it to buffer off for it long enough. And I'm just touching those final highlights with the hero, and getting that nice, bright, sharp edge highlights, really making the armour stand out. It really does make a big difference when you start doing the second and third layers of edge highlights up. So, start to work on the armour now, and I've added some Amber Alchemy to the decayed metal, and just bringing up the same ways you'd expect to do any other highlights, really. So I'm just touching those raised areas, blending it gently into the darker sections. So once I've got that first layer down, I've added a bit more Amber Alchemy into it, and doing exactly the same thing, but just keeping on bringing the areas I'm highlighting a little bit smaller, but a little bit more raised, and just pulling those highlights together ever so gentle, and you get a real nice finish. So again, it's a pure Amber Alchemy at this stage, and I'm almost doing the edge highlights of this. So just so the upper sections, give me a little bit of space just to add a final highlight in, just to we're just keeping the points of the highlights nice and small. So now I've added a bit of chainmail to the Amber Alchemy just for those final highlights, and just getting them right on the points where the light will hit most. So just the tiniest bit of chainmail now, just as a last highlight, just on the most extreme areas. As you can see, I'm using a small brush just to make it nice and accurate. So I didn't record doing a face, as that was done using the standard method. But once it's had its oil wash and its varnishes, there we are. It is done. A lot of work on this one. The weather being a little bit cooler would have made life a little bit easier, but I did enjoy painting it. It was a different model. So I used to have an Empire army, so it reminded me of the old Demigryph Knights. It was nice to go back to painting something along them sort of lines. I'd definitely like to do something a bit like this again. I'm really getting into a bit of a groove with the fantasy stuff, so yeah, I really enjoyed painting this one. There's a few things I'd change. I think I'd definitely do the inside of a cloak a little bit different. I'd like to have another crack at our face again. I'm not totally happy with the way the face turned out, but overall I think it came out pretty cool. So thank you for watching this, guys. As always, we've got some thank yous to make. So obviously thank you to Matt for supplying us with this particular video, and also huge thanks to the Orc Boys, Ludwig Hofbauer, Warren, D-Wack, Kit Lindquist, Acmus of Dawn and Mark. You the guys who are our top paying Patreons, so thank you guys. Without you we couldn't do any of this. Also huge thank yous to the Outposts, which are our affiliate link, where you can get reduced price models, and also any of your hobby equipment what you could possibly want. If you just check us out through the link in the description, we get store credit and you get the discounts. Everyone wins. And also, if you're interested in our merch, check us out on Patreon, check us out on Teesprings. If you want to join us and help us out, any assistance you can give us is all appreciated. Even if it's just a like and a share, or even if you want to go down the Patreon route and get early access to all our videos. Okay guys, we will catch you in the next one, and ta-ra!